So many closed stores, and there's about to be a lot more, unfortunately.
Shopping under lock and key may be the new reality as thieves get away with stealing goods over and over again from stores like CVS.
The issue having a major impact on pharmacies, many of whom are just choosing to close up shop.
Rite Aid recently closed a location in Hell's Kitchen after more than $200,000 in product was stolen over 2 months.
So far this year, there have been more than 20,000 cases of shoplifting reported.
This is something that is very correctable, but no one is moving to correct it.
So 1 month ago, the first Target to ever open in New York City closed because of theft. And now Rite Aid is closing 26 stores in New York. And so are Walgreens and CVS. They're closing stores too. And that's because shoplifting in the city is up 64% from 2019. And it's a big problem for the city. One of the great things about New York is how convenient it is. But if everything is closed, it's not very convenient. And the rent's still obnoxious.
Even security guards who try to intervene and stop criminals like this one in New York City are getting arrested themselves.
This is an epidemic, and it's forcing the mayor to roll out his second retail task force to address this issue this year. And that's because since 2020, shoplifting here has risen faster than in any other major American city. Now, earlier this year, the mayor did lead an effort to combat shoplifting, and it was moderately successful. Shoplifting was down for the first half of 2023, but now we're on task force number 2. And that's because things are regressing and getting worse.
I reveal something that was said during the break? Somebody said it's not their fault, Walgreens. It is Walgreens' fault. They have built this into their business. They take out insurance policies and they say that we're going to do a write-off for this much inventory. They allow this to happen. They also have policies in their companies that say you cannot stop shoplifters, and shoplifters know that.
Now this here was a Walgreens. It's been closed for a little while, but it's an interesting point to accuse the retailers themselves of being complicit in shoplifting. Now that's not to say that retailers are in favor of shoplifting. I mean, they open a store like this. This one was actually renovated right before it closed. It had a redone interior and there were 2 levels. You can see those escalators in the back. It was a big store, and you know what? Nobody is interested in releasing this thing. And across the street from this, we have a new Target, but this location was a former Food Emporium grocery store, which also closed recently. So in the past, you had an actual supermarket across the street from a massive drugstore. Now, there's nothing wrong with Target, and there's a CVS pharmacy in here, but this is a lot smaller than what we had before. And it remains to be seen how long this place is gonna stay open. We're in the same part of town where the riots happened a couple of months ago, where an influencer wanted to give away PS5s. So this neighborhood is very volatile. And apparently $1,000 or less of stolen property is a misdemeanor in New York. And laws like that, combined with bail reform initiatives that basically mean nobody has to pay cash bail anymore, means that people who might steal could have less consequences than they could have had before. That's why there's not a lot of appetite for new stores around here. But Walgreens technically owns Duane Reade, so they do have a presence here, even though they shut down half their store. But Walgreens closing one store and downsizing another is nothing compared to what's happening to Rite Aid, because they're closing 26 stores here in New York. So this here was one of the 26 locations that Rite Aid had decided to close. This store is already closed. That happened pretty quick. I thought it would still kind of be open, but it's already gone. Now, Rite Aid has recently filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The brand has announced they're closing 154 stores nationwide, but the Wall Street Journal speculates that that number could actually reach as high as 500 stores in America. There was a Rite Aid here, but yeah, it doesn't look like it's open either. I'm pretty sure the sign on the other door said this was gonna be here for at least another month, but wait, maybe it's still in here? Oh no. Nope, just a big hole in the ground. So if you look on this map, there are a couple of Walgreens a little bit south from here. But now that these 2 Rite Aids are gone, people that were stealing from them can't target them anymore. And that means it could just be a matter of time before those Walgreens drop too. So I managed to find a drugstore that's gonna be pretty hard to shoplift from, and will likely remain open for a while because this Walgreens, Duane Reade, is inside the Moynihan Trail train station. There's also a ton of anti-theft measures throughout the store. Not on the Reese's, but definitely on the Lindt, and of course on the hair dryers. This stuff is pretty common at most stores in New York, and it wasn't enough to save these Rite Aids.
Rite Aid lost nearly $3 billion in the last 6 years, partly due to legal troubles over accusations of unlawful opioid prescriptions.
Look at that, legal issues related to prescription abuse. That's part of the problem Rite Aid had. But as you'll soon see, decisions Rite Aid made with their pharmacy were likely related to losses they suffered from shoplifting. Whistleblowers claim that Rite Aid pharmacies unlawfully filled prescriptions that looked super shady, and that pharmacists ignored red flags when the prescriptions were presented. They had no legitimate medical purpose. They were outside of the ordinary scope of how doctors would normally practice medicine. There were all kinds of problems. And this essentially allowed millions of controlled substances to just flow onto the streets of the country. The U.S. Justice Department has since taken over the lawsuit, and according to the whistleblowers, the pharmacy managers at Rite Aid deleted internal notes that pharmacists made to alert their colleagues that, hey, a certain doctor might be prescribing things a bit weird. They deleted those notes so that those prescriptions would keep getting filled. Apparently, this was going on from 2014 to 2019, and managers also directed their employees to be very mindful about everything they were putting in writing. If you're gonna tell a pharmacist to be mindful about what they put in writing, there's definitely something incredibly shady going on, and that's because stores like Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid make their money in a manner that most of us have no idea of. So what exactly are they doing? The answer to that will surprise you. So I didn't know this, but apparently stores like Walgreens don't make most of their money from the stuff that you buy inside the store. It all comes from the pharmacy. And that means the gift bags, the bows, pencils, pens, even the overpriced ink for your HP printer. None of that stuff is here for you to buy. Well, it is here for you to buy it, but this stuff isn't here to keep the store afloat. These are just things you buy while you're waiting for your prescription, because that's the big biz. And that likely explains why most of what you see on the shelves is overpriced or is locked up behind a glass box where you got a call for an associate. Now, stuff like this might seem like a major inconvenience to shoppers, but remember, shoppers aren't here for this stuff. They're already here waiting for something else. They don't mind waiting a little longer if the thing that they want is behind the glass and it has to be unlocked. And because the pharmacy business is so profitable, that's how you boost the profits of a failing store. You fill more prescriptions, but doing that in a reckless, unsafe manner, that's why these substances spill out on the streets and hurt people. And usually critics of shoplifting are first to point out that, hey, you're paying higher prices at the store because stores build shoplifting into their business model. But because what Rite Aid did now, built into the business model, is the degradation of society through substance abuse. That's really sad. But in the case of Rite Aid, it's very likely that store managers pressured pharmacists to fill more prescriptions because they were making up the losses in other areas. Because not only is shoplifting a huge problem in New York City, but the cost for renting a store is incredibly expensive. Plus you've got high taxes, high labor costs, but there's a very specific reason why Rite Aid pharmacies were trying to combat their losses by pumping out prescriptions. And it's also the reason stores like Walgreens and CVS didn't have to go and do that. And it's probably the reason why this Walgreens' pharmacy is closed. So apparently pharmacists at places like this CVS have been walking off the job en masse over the last couple of weeks. And the reason that's so strange is because the pharmacy part of these businesses is their lifeblood. That's why they exist. And you'd think that big companies like Walgreens and CVS, that they would be doing everything they can to keep their pharmacists happy. And notice the pharmacists at Rite Aid weren't reportedly walking off the job.
The problem is that CVS and Walgreens are in this cost-cutting mode. The problem is that cutting costs leads to pharmacies that are very unsafe.
Cost-cutting mode. That sounds awesome. When a business is in cost-cutting mode, everyone suffers. And that's not only because the stores keep doing this so they don't lose any more money. I had to get antibiotics for my kids at a pharmacy like this 2 weeks ago, and the line was absolutely insane. We waited for 45 minutes inside the store because everyone there was slammed and overworked. There's too much going on. And at many of these facilities, the staff at the pharmacy are just absolutely swamped. You can see a ton of folks just kind of wandering around the store, checking their phones, looking at the pharmacy, waiting for something to happen. And that's because when you go into a pharmacy like this, the staff behind the counter aren't all pharmacists. You've typically got one pharmacist who fills prescriptions and a whole bunch of support people that help them do their job so that they can spend more time making sure everybody gets right, safe amounts of everything, and so that they can counsel patients who need help deciding what to do.
Pharmacists, by working for CVS and Walgreens, are putting their lives at risk. and they're putting patients' safety at risk. That's the problem, and that's what we're doing this for, is the American people.
Okay, so as we learned with Rite Aid, there's an incentive to fill as many prescriptions as possible, as fast as possible, because that's how these businesses make their money. But that's how mistakes are made, and that's how people get hurt. And worst of all, that's how shady prescriptions make their way out here onto the streets and hurt all of us. And apparently at some pharmacies in New York, the pharmacist makes over $100,000 a year. But to function correctly, they need the help of the support staff, but these big chains are having those people do other things that take them away from helping the pharmacist and keeping customers safe. And by overworking their pharmacists to a greater degree than Rite Aid, their stores are still open, but the pharmacists have had enough.
You're not going to the local CVS necessarily to buy your shampoo anymore or your razor blades. You can just go online and order it and have it delivered to your house.
And that kind of makes sense, right? Amazon and Walmart, their websites are always going to be way cheaper than your local Walgreens in New York City, which has higher prices because of theft and because of where it's located. Dental floss, Tylenol, Speed Stick, all the boring stuff you used to get at a Walgreens. If you want to combat the high inflation and the high cost of living associated with New York City like crazy rent, eliminating stores like this from your purchasing habits, that's going to really help. You'll save thousands of dollars a year. And Amazon doesn't have to build shoplifting into its business model. They're not going to get shoplifted into closing like this place. And here in New York, the retail theft is just getting worse and worse and worse. Pretty soon, it's going to be too expensive to shop at these places, and they're all going to look like this Walgreens behind me if the city can't figure out how to turn this around. But there are steps stores like this can take to prevent shoplifting, and some do it better than others. So we're inside a Target right now, and Target is a great example of what to do and what not to do if you are a retail chain in New York City. Because even though this place is super nice, it's got a lot in common with the Target that just closed up on 117th Street. And the first of those is the self-checkouts right behind me. Apparently self-checkouts encourage people who might not want to pay for things to just walk out of the store. Now you are on camera, but Costco, which has the less shrink out of all of these major stores, they don't use self-checkouts, which means that you've always got to talk to a person on your way out of the store with your things. That's a big disincentive. And what's also interesting is they're not filling 100% of their shelf space. But what's really cool is Target is pretty much an everything store. So it replaces the grocery store that was here already. And even though these high value items are locked up behind the glass cage, there's enough staff here. I see all kinds of people working around. So it's not understaffed. So if you need somebody with a key to open this up for you, it's not as big of a deal as it was at that little Dwayne Reed we saw earlier with the closed pharmacy. Why don't they lock up the OxyClean? This is like the best soap out there, man. Big ticket electronics have the alarms on them, and the $14 Pokeballs, those are locked up. Most valuable item in the store right there. Look at this. They've even got weights, air mattresses. It's almost like they're competing with Kmart, which went out of business, and Best Buy with the electronics, and Whole Foods with the groceries. And then they got the makeup and cosmetics section. This is better than your Walgreens because this part of the store is actually a CVS pharmacy. It looks like all the other CVS pharmacies here in New York right now, but by having a little bit of everything plus the pharmacy, there's a lot of reasons to come in here. And believe it or not, this pharmacy is not exactly swamped, which is a good thing. And it could be that the way to have a retail store now is to have it well staffed and super bright and very active and alive looking. If it looks dead, people might take advantage of it. And that could be why, even though Target has recently shut down some New York stores, they're probably in a way better position to succeed than places like Rite Aid. Do you think the city can turn this around, or is retail as we know it in major cities like this completely finished? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.